I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. The title is Technological Advancements in Functional Assessments and Fall Prevention. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the nature of this symposium or webinar today. I'm Margie Lockman. I'm co-leader of the Aging Pilot Corps at the Massachusetts AI and Technology Center for Connected Care in Aging and Alzheimer's Disease, and we're sponsoring this webinar. Our main focus is on the development, validation, and translation of AI and technologies to support successful aging at home. And we specifically focus on technology solutions that address key risk factors for functional health. Our focus today is on two of our pilot projects that assess, evaluate, and treat risk factors for falls due to issues related to things such as balance and Parkinson's disease. We're fortunate to have two talks today. They're both about 20 minutes, and we'll have some time in between for questions. I also ask that you can put questions in the chat box so that the presenters would potentially be able to answer your questions there as well. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, John Ralston, who is co-founder of Neurosantis, Inc. John is a pioneer in the development of non-invasive bioelectronic devices and adaptive neuroplastic treatments for neurosensory, neuromotor, and neurocognitive impairments that have limited pharmacological treatment options. At Neurosantis, John is collaborating with healthcare researchers, providers, and payers to restore motor and cognitive functions that have been impaired by both normal aging and accelerated aging caused by head trauma, disease, and spaceflight. The title of his talk today is Wearable Diagnostic Sensors and Personalized Bioelectronic Therapeutics for the Treatment of Neurophysiological Conditions. So, John, please begin.
Thank you very much, Margie. Okay, let's launch in. So thank you everyone from joining again. My name is John Ralston, CEO and co-founder at Neurosantis. We are based in Menlo Park, California, also with operations in Calgary and Toronto in Canada. As a company, we have a very simple mission, which is to help our older population to continue living actively and independently by delivering a very unique form of bioelectronic restoration of the body's aging balance system, which is what we'll dig into today. So to set the tone, most of you probably didn't realize it at the time, but we all spend about the first 16 years of our lives waiting for our brains to learn how to properly integrate inputs from the three key sensory systems that contribute to balance. So vision, proprioception, and the vestibular balance organs in our inner ear. It takes those 16 years for our brains to learn how to properly integrate those inputs and generate the motor control outputs that enable all of the amazing feats of balance and movement that we're all capable of. That process, however, starts to decline again someplace between the age of 40 and 50, much younger than previously recognized. And we now know that it's age-related changes in those vestibular balance organs in our ear that are the primary contributor to balance decline in more than 55% of all adults over the age of 50. So that's almost 80 million people just in Canada and the US. The economic impact is well documented and enormous, almost $300 billion. But despite all of those people and all of those dollars, there's still no easy to use tool that can be used to diagnose age-related changes across all these different components of the balance system. And the only current option to actually restore lost vestibular function are experimental and high-risk vestibular implants. So looking a little bit more closely at the vestibular balance organs themselves, there are actually 5 of them in each of your inner ears, 2 otolith organs that sense linear motion, 3 semicircular canals that sense rotational motion. They're all essentially small fluid-filled structures that have specialized motion-sensing hair cell bundles. When your head moves, the fluid moves, it deflects the hair cells and generates nerve impulses that travel along the vestibular nerve to the brain, where they're then integrated with inputs from your visual and proprioceptive systems. As we age, it turns out, we begin to lose those vestibular hair cells. And that in turn triggers a whole cascade of additional atrophy effects. The synapses between those hair cells in the vestibular nerve lose gain, which leads to the vestibular nerve itself losing conductivity or excitability. So there's three things that weaken the signal traveling to the brain, which in turn leads to atrophy in regions of the brain that integrates those sensory inputs and process them to generate motor control outputs. And another key process involved here, so we're going to talk a lot today about the vestibular system itself, and this process of sensory reweighting. That's the process by which your central nervous system, so your brain and spinal cord, continuously assess the reliability and update the relative weights assigned to each of the sensory inputs. That sensory weighting can happen dynamically, so in response to changing extrinsic or environmental factors, like walking on a rough surface or in poor lighting. It can also happen slowly over time in response to changing intrinsic or physiological factors, like declining eyesight, losing vestibular hair cells, peripheral neuropathies that may impact the peripheral nervous system and proprioception. And it turns out that age-related reductions in either the response time or the accuracy of that sensory weighting process play a big role in balance decline and increasing fall risks in older populations. So the current diagnostic approach, if you want to actually tease out the impairments across the different sensory inputs and changes in sensory reweighting in response to impairments, that currently requires really expensive equipment like the computerized dynamic posturography system shown here. These things measure changes in balance and the sensory integration when different combinations of your visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive sensory inputs are either available or they're disrupted. But you typically only find these things in balance and gait research labs or specialized neuromotor clinics. So most adults never have the benefit of being assessed using these devices, which means most adults are never really properly diagnosed in terms of things like vestibular decline. And even if they are, the current standard of care is what we call vestibular rehab therapy, which is an exercise-based treatment protocol, borrows heavily from things like yoga and Tai Chi, typically administered by physical therapists or occupational therapists who've gone back to school for vestibular specific training. But the goal of vestibular rehab therapy is to teach patients to compensate for the vestibular loss by making more use of vision and proprioception. It doesn't actually restore degraded vestibular function or prevent further loss. And again, the only thing that will restore that vestibular function are experimental and very high-risk vestibular implants, which are never likely to become widely available for the general population. So that's where Nersantis comes in. We've addressed both the balanced diagnostic problem and the balanced restoration problem. So I'll talk today about an easy-to-use wearable device that we developed for balance testing, and another easy-to-use bioelectronic device that we developed for balance restoration. It delivers a very unique form of electrical stimulation to the vestibular system that activates long-lasting neuroplastic restoration of balance and mobility, and has now been proven effective in study populations from 50 to 95 years of age. So our breakthroughs in balance diagnostics leverage our own innovations in head-mounted Fibrata sensors shown here, along with machine learning models and digital biomarkers that we've developed. The Fibrata sensor is essentially a very sensitive seismometer for the human body. We use it to detect and analyze involuntary micromovements of the head and body during a pair of simple 2-minute tests that assess each person's unique balance and gait profiles, any impairments to sensory inputs, or the central nervous system processing for motor control, as well as fall risk. And this technique where we assign various vibrational frequency bands to different components of the balance system actually leverage two large bodies of literature, one around adaptive neuromotor control and the effects of impairments in humans, and the same thing, adaptive neuromotor control and the effects of impairments in humanoid robots. So let's look at some Vibrata data and sensory weighting results. The data I'll show here is from a study that enrolled 516 participants between the ages of 51 to 98 at 4 residential senior living centers. Here's Vibrata data from an individual with very good balance who has reported no falls in the previous 6 months. On the right is eyes open data. On the left is eyes closed. These are the 3 raw accelerometer traces, so X, Y, and Z. Here's the same data for an individual who's reported a single fall in the past month at the beginning of balance degradation. And here's an individual with multiple falls in the past 6 months. So you can see this dramatic loss of postural stability and the additional instability that sets in when the eyes are closed and the visual input is taken away. Here are the same 3 individuals. Now we're just looking down from above. So we're looking at in the horizontal plane, we're looking at the degree of motion, again, with the eyes open and eyes closed. You see those same trends. And now when we take and do the sensory weighting analysis and look at the relative contributions of visual, vestibular, proprioception, central nervous system control, we see that the very clear signature of age-related balance decline is this loss of vestibular function, which is offset by upregulating via the sensory weighting process, upregulating the reliance on proprioception, which it turns out is not the best thing to do as we age and lose muscle mass and strength in the lower limbs. That impaired the vestibular processing, over-reliance on proprioception, makes for a very unstable and very high fall risk individual. So the next question is, can we reverse that to any degree? And this is where we've applied electrical vestibular stimulation, or EVS. It's actually one of the most widely studied bioelectronic stimulation techniques. Its origins for therapeutic applications go back at least 20 years with space medicine researchers at NASA. Looking for techniques to counter the rapid acceleration of balance aging that occurs in astronauts who spend prolonged periods of microgravity. Your vestibular balance organs rely on gravity for proper functioning. When you take away gravity, literally within minutes to hours, you can age the equivalent of decades. So early studies indicated that applying the right type of electrical stimulation may actually help recover that function. But despite the fact that those therapeutic benefits and mechanisms of action are actually fairly well understood, EVS has never been widely commercialized because it's been very difficult to assess and accommodate individual responses to the really wide range of potential EVS stimulation parameters, combinations of frequencies and amplitudes and dosing regimens. It turns out that our Vibrata sensor was the ideal tool to do that. So we can map an individual's unique balance impairments and sensory weighting profiles. We can now explore a wide range of electrical vestibular stimulation, and we can see in real time how individuals respond. And this led to the discovery of a very unique class of EVS stimulation that activates long-lasting neuroplastic restoration of balance that carries over into gait stability and carries over into reduced fall risk. So we're now commercializing those capabilities with the Nervesta bioelectronic stimulation device shown here, and a proprietary treatment protocol that only requires 18 treatment sessions, each of those sessions only 20 minutes long, and delivered over a 4 to 6 week period. You can find a lot more details of all of this in our study protocol. It's published on clinicaltrials.gov. 2 years of clinical studies, our first randomized control trial revealed that the balance improvements typically begin in the initial sessions. They increase progressively, plateau after 5 to 6 weeks, and then persist for 6 months or longer. At which point we can deliver a shorter maintenance treatment, typically only 5 days in a row, 20 minutes each day. We've also shown that we can use the fibrata testing to screen out non-responders in the first 2 treatment sessions. And in the study populations today, non-responders are typically only 3 or 4%. So most adults between the age of 50 and 98 respond in a very dramatic way to this vestibular stimulation therapy. And again, if we look at the sensory rating results from those fibrata sensors before and after that 18-session treatment protocol, we see the mirror image of balance decline. The balance recovery is predominantly due to an upregulation of vestibular balance control, allowing the brain to downregulate or downweight its reliance on proprioception. So there's the hallmark of recovered balance stability in older populations. The actual product we offer is it's a platform as a service that includes the Nervesta device, the fibrata sensor, and a charging case, a mobile app that's used to configure and run tests and treatments, and a set of cloud data services that do much of the heavy lifting, all of the signal processing, machine learning, generating reports for clinicians and for patients. Pilot deployments with senior living communities, with at-home care providers, with physical therapy and neuro rehab clinics that we've carried out, both in Canada and the US, reveal that the vestibular stimulation therapy has no adverse side effects, and it can be delivered by individuals with minimum training, essentially any senior care location, including patients at home, and still achieve these very dramatic improvements in balance and gait stability and reductions in fall risk. Most exciting is what our pilot participants themselves say. So almost universally, participants notice immediate improvements in their balance, as well as the walking, in those first couple of sessions. And that continues to improve to the end of the 18 sessions. Many of our participants report that they notice their improved balance stability, especially when they're walking downstairs. Like for many years, they've had no problems walking upstairs, but as they approach a flight of stairs from the top, they realize they're very hesitant. They slow down, they grab the banister, and now they're walking down the stairs again without that hesitation. Participants who had experienced severe vertigo no longer is experiencing vertigo after completing the treatments. The ability to stand on one leg and pull on the trousers again without having to lean on a wall, right? A lot of our older populations are very active, and generally it's their yoga instructor that's pointed out, wow, you're starting to perform all those one-legged stances again without falling over or reaching for someone to lean on. Here's highlights of a recent pilot deployment with the continuing care retirement community here in California, in Silicon Valley. In this case, we've trained the staff at an at-home care provider company, Caring Hands Caregivers, and they have gone into the senior community to deliver the treatment. You can see it's a very, very social affair. During the vestibular stimulation treatment, the actual stimulation is below the perceptual threshold. So there's no sensation. It's very comfortable. It's very well tolerated. And participants are generally recruited in groups of 4, and they can happily spend the 20 minutes simply having a discussion or socializing because there are also no specialized exercises required. And again, you can see in the bottom here, this dramatic reduction in balance instability over the course of the 18 sessions. And the fact that the initial couple of sessions generally have this very, very large improvement. Data from a physical therapy pilot in Canada, who's now delivering our treatment into senior living communities. Again, you can see these dramatic reductions in balance instability and fall risk, the corresponding sensory weighting, whereby it really is the vestibular function that's recovering. And finally, I'll wrap up with a brief description of what we've been able to achieve by developing machine learning models to automate the process of identifying and ranking the importance of these fibrata signal features and the sensory weighting profiles. Our first project in this area actually goes back 4 years when we were exploring the derivation of impairment-specific digital biomarkers to improve the diagnosis of concussion injuries. In particular, we wanted to determine if the head impact had led to a neurological injury or to a vestibular injury, given that the vestibular balance organs are actually much more sensitive to damage from mechanical impacts. Or as we eventually were able to show, to both. In a published clinical study of 200 concussion patients, the results shown here, we showed that the combination of the fibrata sensor data and our machine learning models outperformed the previously reported approaches to machine learning-based concussion diagnostics, using a wide range of other data sources, including things like MRI, functional MRI, EEG, and blood biomarkers, instrumented balance and gait testing, eye tracking, head impact data, and computerized neurocognitive testing. And finally, what's brought us to where we are today with our A2 Pilot Awards. We've extended these explorations with the team at UMass and shown here that we can use the fibrata data to train a 1D convolutional neural network to classify each EVS treatment session in terms of its effectiveness in enhancing balance. The results are very encouraging with a 93% overall classification accuracy, 95% precision classifying effective sessions, 87% precision classifying ineffective sessions. And the goal of our future work will be to use the trained machine learning models to personalize the EVS parameters to each patient's unique impairment profile at the outset of the treatment and their unique recovery trajectory during the treatment. The potential benefits of doing that include increasing the magnitude of the balance recovery, reducing the number or the duration of the treatment sessions, and extending the persistence of the improvements after the treatment has been completed. So with that, I'll wrap up with a round of acknowledgements to the company's leadership team and advisory board, a very multidisciplinary group of clinical neurology researchers and practitioners, medical device and data platform engineers, healthcare business professionals, and more recently, insurance industry executives. And finally, acknowledgement to all of our development partners, particularly Mass AITC and UMass Amherst. A big thank you to the A2 Pilot Awards folks at NIH and IA, and all of our investors and grant and prize awarders who have funded all of this work. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you, and take any questions.
Yeah, we have time for some questions indeed. Or also feel free to put them in the chat as well so John can answer them when we go on to the next talk. Please raise your hand and I'll be happy to call on you.
Margie, I'll take the prerogative if you don't mind and go first.
Oh, please, go ahead.
John, awesome work. Really exciting to see all of that and so nicely presented. I'm curious, I want to push you a little bit on personalized intervention and kind of what that looks like. Because I presume the data you're using right now makes some assessment of whether it seems like effective, not effective, as opposed to, and on a single protocol, as in one way of delivering treatment. And so could you just talk us through a little bit about how treatment might get actually modified to personalize it, what that would look like? Is it duration? Is it location? Is it amplitude? Like, what is it about treatment that would ultimately, an ML model would ultimately allow for personalization with?
Yeah, let me give you some examples. So first of all, the treatment, as you pointed out, the current standardized protocol is the same for everyone. So in the first commercial release, We've avoided the complications of monitoring, controlled loop feedback, machine learning. Those things will easily delay your FDA approvals by an extra 1 to 2 years. So, I mean, what was really promising is the fact that we can get these very dramatic improvements in a common protocol, right? But we know from just the raw data as well as those sensor weighting plots, everyone has a very unique signature, right? So at the beginning of treatment, everyone's different. And throughout the treatment, everyone's response is different. And we know from some of the deeper clinical assessments that those differences, for example, in some people, the loss of vestibular function is predominantly in those otoliths, the linear motion sensing organs. In other people, it's in one or more of the semicircular canals, right? One of the beauties of this non-invasive electrical vestibular stimulation, turns out you don't have to. Previously, everyone thought you'd have to stick electrodes like right into the vestibular organs if you wanted to selectively excite the different pieces. You can do that by varying the frequency, right? Mm. So there's a simple example. If we determine, look, your problem is your otoliths, we'll just excite those, and we won't waste stimulation on the semicircular canals.
Great.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks,
so
John.
there's a really simple example.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, there may be time at the end. If anyone thinks of questions for John, please do put it in the chat. And I think it's time now we can move on to our second speaker. Our next speaker is Hamed Tabki, who's co-founder of Foresight Cares and associate professor at UNC Charlotte. He is co-founder and CTO at Foresight Cares and associate professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. His research focuses on bringing recent advances in artificial intelligence to our communities to enhance our health and wellness. He has an extensive background in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer system design for smart digital health applications. He was recently honored as one of 6 recipients of the inaugural Young Alumni Impact Award for 2025 from Northeastern University College of Engineering. The title of his talk is From Motion to Meaning, Quantifying Fall Risk in Older Adults Through Accessible Visual AI Assessment.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Happy to be here to present the work on behalf of Foresight Cares. And hopefully I'm looking forward to receive interesting questions, feedback from attendees, and hopefully, who knows, maybe we can find new pilots after this talk. My aim today is just briefly talk about what we are working in Foresight Cares and what is our product and the technology, and showing some results of our recent pilots. I think this is obvious. I don't need to significantly elaborate on it, but we see a growth in aging population, needs for in-person visit we observe in many cases, and we see also increase in lack of sufficient workforce in senior cares, which is a big problem. Specifically, I can talk about in North Carolina. It's a really important challenge right now, and challenge of expensive equipment, and of course, the significant burden that we observe and see in families and loved ones. These are all associated to older adults care and the difficulties that are going to be exacerbated in near future. One specific problem that we are focusing on is fall, and fall associated with the older adults. There are 4 hidden facts about fall that are not being discussed. One is, first of all, it's very common. 1 out of 3 older adults age 65 and older fall each year. Is hidden. It means that a lot of time it happens out of nowhere, and a lot of time older adults and older people are not open to talking about it, or are not accepting that they are in risk of fall till they fall. It can be extremely harmful. A lot of other, difficulties and complication we see in older adult care is coming after the fall. And also it can be extremely costly for society, both emotional and financial cost. So in Foresight Care, our aim was to see how we can provide better preventative measurements to do a better assessment about fall risk and bringing more awareness, and hopefully, backing to my previous slide, making it accessible and affordable for all older adults, regardless of their demographic and their, financial situation. But doing that is honestly was not extremely difficult because CDC has formalized a lot of steps that needs to be done. And I'm sure everybody here is aware of CDC study test, which stands for Stopping Elderly Accident Deaths and Injuries, that it specifically focuses on fall risk assessment. And one important aspect of CDC is screening, which of course asks for some older adults and or patients, medical background and other situations that they may have. And then the other step is assessing, and a lot of that focuses on motor function assessment, and then, of course, intervention practices. So at Foresight Cares, we are specifically right now focusing on the screening and assess, and our aim is see how we can develop very easy, affordable tools that can be accessible to all older adults to streamline the process of screening and assessment. Again, if we dive into the CDC study test, I encourage you guys, you can look at the website as well. They have recently also updated the guideline. One important aspect of assessment is motor function assessment, and focusing on three main assessment moves, which of course one is a four-stage balance test, and the other one is 30-second sit-to-stand and time up and go test. And they have a scoring mechanisms, both for male and female older adults and for different age ranges. Of course, the assessment and the guideline by CDC is a more binary, whether you're at risk of fall or not. We thought that maybe basically that's something we did at Foresight Care, is our own version of CDC study test that adds, high risk, which is of course red, needs immediate intervention, moderate risk, which is yellow, need some level of exercises or intervention, or potentially they are relatively at a higher risk of fall, and green, that they are relatively at a lower or mild risk of fall. So, and based on this CDC guideline, so a lot of time, this CDC study test, while provided by CDC, is not being mandated, and a lot of time is being ignored or is not being done routinely. So we decided to design an app, an AI-powered app, that basically enable older adults and their caregivers to do this assessment in their own living environment. So our app, we call it AVA, which is AI-based video assessment. It basically do a visual assessment based on the CDC guideline and generate scoring based on the CDC guideline, which can be used to identify the risk of fall in older adults. You see some of the pages of the app and the main page of the app, which basically, as we are discussing and talking about it right now, provide these three main assessment moves that, again, recommended by CDC. So to give you guys an idea of what is this app and how it performs, I think the best way is just watching a video of the app. So this is the screenshot of the app. It's relatively the app few months ago. The UI has slightly improved since then. It's primarily available in iPad devices. So older adults, with the help of their caregivers, can set up the app, and the app uses the built-in camera and processing power of iPad or iPhones. And basically, and you see on the right side, you see the digital copy or a skeleton of older adults as they are doing the assessment. Basically, it's kind of what AI says, not exactly, but it's just a nice visualization to show that basically it just focuses on motions and moves. Again, no external camera, no passive monitoring, no surveillance, no facial recognition, and then it measures, range of motions in hip and knee, specifically for each assessment move, right? Depending on what assessment they do, and then based on that, it performs the scoring. So that the assessment that you saw was for chair rise. The next one is a standing balance test, and so on and so forth. But my aim of this video, just showing you guys that we are talking with an actual product that is already out there in App Store and can be used, hopefully, but by many older adults. So I'm not gonna talk too much about our AI technology, but our unique value here is performing the entire intelligent processing on existing smartphone devices, and we really don't need advanced smartphone devices. Anything after, let's say, iPhone 10 or 11 is good enough, or iPad 9 generations after, or which are available at $200, are good enough to run Ava app. The technology has been patented. It uses some of the recent advances in artificial intelligence and computer vision, focusing on large pre-trained transformers and some generative AI principles, and then capturing the heat map of human movements and extrapolating the motions and then translating it to the scores, in this case, the scores that are aligned with the CDC scoring. And the most important challenge for us was running everything on phone real time. And that was intentional because we want to stay away from passive video surveillance monitoring that needs external cameras, heavy equipment, hard to install, and also addressing some privacy issues that might be associated with visual monitoring and visual assessment. In this case, I'm talking about passive visual monitoring. Uh, so, we last fall we ran a pilot into senior living communities. If I want to be more specific, two independent living communities in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have the pilot ran for over uh, almost 3 months, 12 weeks, where older adults were participating every week to do the assessment. And we did not do the assessment. Actually, we engaged with the physical therapists, staff in each community, and they did the assessment themselves. And we had about 40 to 50 older adults per each community. And I think this is also, and the participation was completely voluntary between those that already, enroll. And you also see the number of times that each unique older adult participated in this pilot, which we see near 55% or 68% of older adults as participated 9 to 12 times. Means 9 to 12 different, assessment session that those assessment session ran on weekly basis, which was very encouraging for us. And again, this is just showing one example of one setup in one of the older adults independent living communities. I just don't know why my video doesn't run. Oh, okay, it's running right now. And this is one setup that you see that community was running this every week. They already had iPads or they purchased iPads, so for them was very easy. You see that lady here also dancing in front of the app because we found out this skeleton or avatar that we're working on it is very engaging for them. And you see they were doing tag or chair rides, and it was very encouraging for them. And it was a very nice social gathering as well for them. So we were really encouraged by that. And we saw a lot of significant commitment and engagement by staff and PTs of these communities that was again very encouraging for us. Um, but we wanted to have some objective impacts of this pilot. So one thing which was, again, these are initial results, but are extremely encouraging for us. Some of them may look really bold, but we don't see any reason why not. Wow. So we objectively evaluate the risk of fall, again, based on the CDC guideline, uh, for each individual with respect to their first assessment and the last assessment. So let's say beginning of the pilot, the first week and last week of pilot. And for each community, let's say for the first community, we saw while at the beginning we had 53% low risk of fall, 46% moderate risk of fall, and zero high risk of fall. And in this case, if you have a high risk of fall, basically you can't function. So, but just by through running this pilot and they get engaged, they were participating more in their exercise classes. One thing which was very encouraging for us. We kept hearing that, oh, our exercise classes are being full, and they like to see that, oh, what are their mobility deficit or balance challenges, and they were really engaged to work on that. So by the last week, it reduced, same app, same assessment. The moderate risk of fall reduced from 46% to 12%. For the other community, from 59% to 34%, which was again very encouraging for us. Um, so uh, we also one important aspect of the app is, of course, working with senior living centers give us an opportunity to do a large scale pilot and test the app in a more controlled environment when there's more supervision. But the ultimate goal of our app is doing at-home assessment. 95% of older adults living in their own homes, their own living environments, and they live alone or they live with a family caregiver. So we also wanted to be more specific and focusing on specific groups of older adults. And we discovered that there is a huge room and opportunity to enhance AVA to be used by Parkinson disease patients, not only for their fall risk assessment, which is very important in PD patients, also for their general motor function assessment. That was the primary focus of our A2 pilot, which was a collaboration with our clinic partner, Memory and Move, where we engaged with we had 15 pairs of older adults and their family caregivers. Uh, uh, at least half of them came from rural areas in North Carolina. And we engaged with them through whole pilot, trying to redesign the app for at-home use, making sure that it's usable for at-home use. Caregivers can do the assessment independently. And older adults are being engaged, especially Parkinson patients. There are more difficulties and more challenges. So that was very encouraging for us to see that also A2 pilot, Mass AITC appreciated that, and this project received the funding to do this effort. And this is just showing one setup with one pair of older adult PD patient and her caregiver that basically both engage with PD patients and doing assessments and improving the app to meet their requirements as well as their unique situation, as well as engaging with their caregivers to make sure that they can do this assessment independently in their own living environment without direct supervision of us or any staff or PT or neurologist, which is the key, right? To address the growing challenge of older adults care. So I'm just showing some of the results of the pilot. So the whole pilot, we had to redesign the app for at-home use. It has not yet released to public yet. It's a work in progress, but we're very excited about it. We are also discovering that for at-home use, in contrast to communities, they don't have often iPad and they want to run it on their iPhone. So that we are redesigning some of the interfaces that was difficult for us, and we need to do some adjustment in our visual AI assessment. But one thing which was very encouraging for us more than 56% of participants wants to do it on weekly basis, and they keep asking us, okay, so when do you release the app? Which we're just having some concerns, most from usability and reliability and safety of the app, and we focus on that to make sure that they can use it independently. And post-assessment survey results has been very encouraging for us. Of course, I oversimplify the work. We did 3 rounds of focus group with them. We also engaged 2 different group of neurologists and get their input and what kind of assessment needs to be done. Uh, and after all these 3 different rounds of, bringing them to the clinic and adjusting the app and doing the assessment, this was the final outcome after our third study with older adult Parkinson patients and their caregivers, which again, we are pretty satisfied with the acceptance of the app by them. So we are also establishing, and we are already established with North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and North Carolina Fall Prevention Program, that we are hoping to push the app to many older adults, including older adults PD patients that live in rural communities that don't have access to sustainable healthcare or care provider, and many of them likes to do this independently in their own living environment, and we are engaging with social workers as well. I think AVA is a uh, uh, very good motivation for why older adults need to have iPad or iPhone or access to the broadband internet. Uh, Moving forward, we are also uh, this going beyond or mass AITC pilot, but uh, we are focusing on adding, customized exercises with AI coaching on the app, so they can use it again in the comfort of their home with direct supervision of their caregivers if they have one, as well as validation against motion capture system, which was very important for us, because one question that we keep facing is that, oh, how accurate are your results? And right now, our app is not a medical device, it's more like a health and wellness that can provide additional information. But we are really aiming to make it very reliable and as accurate as possible. So as I'm presenting this, part of our team is running a motion capture system, doing the same test, comparing the results of the AI against the motion capture system. So we can have an opportunity to validate the accuracy of our AI and our app, as well as collecting additional data. And there is a lack of data for older adults to further improve the quality of our AI-based visual assessment. This is our team, and I'm fortunate to be part of such a great team. And our headquarters is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we are always looking forward to work with more senior living centers or run new pilots with different older adults from different demographics. So feel free to shoot me an email if you were interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we do have a couple of questions for you in the chat, which I will read.
Sure.
And we also have one for John, which I'll read after that, after you address the first 2 questions. So let's see. We have from David Dancero. Does AVA app provide a composite fall risk profile score weighting all 3 of the mobility assessment measurements? 4-stage tug, chair, stands. Also, did users find the 4-stage balance safe to try alone?
Great question. Yes, we fully support, and our final scoring is comprehensive, combining all of them together. Although they can track individual scores as well. One feature of the app that we recently added, we have a whole database that they can track their progress or compare the results with their average results that expected and their peers. And what was the second question? I forgot.
Did the
The
users
four-stage
find the
balances.
four-stage did the users find the 4-stage balance safe to try alone?
Yes, let me show. I mean, it's a difficult, very good question. So four-stage balance test is a tricky one, especially one leg or tandem test. Tandem test relatively is more safer. If you see, we put a chair next to the older adults. In this case, that if they cannot maintain their balance, they can hold a chair. We did not have any difficulties, and most of them found it safe. But again, I acknowledge that that can be potentially a challenge for some of them. But so far, no.
Okay, thank you. Another question from A. Adams. How much do you expect this to cost to the older adult at home?
Uh, so right now, we again, thanks to a Mass AITC and NIH, so all of our pilots are free. We don't, and so of course, eventually, we need to charge the users. The question is that who's going to pay for this? We are even hoping that the insurance, even Medicare or Medicaid, can cover AVA. That would be great because then they don't need to pay anything. But uh, right now, we are thinking if we want to charge, something would be around less than $10 per month because again, there is no hardware involved. We assume that most of older adults have iPhone or iPad, or or their caregivers have one, and they just need to install the app, and they are good to go. And we are focusing a lot on their user experience, something that has been really ignored, and we see it's a huge barrier in older adults, and a lot of apps and technologies are designed for younger adults. So I think the key factor is making sure that it can be seamlessly used by older adults and their caregivers.
Okay. I have a question actually about,
So
I think the study you showed improvement after exercise. Did I get that
yes,
right?
yes.
So what was it was it strength training, resistance training, or aerobics, or what was the exercise class? What do you
So
think is the main mechanism for improving?
so I think this is a great question again. So in this case, we did not do any intervention at Foresight Care. So we didn't give them any recommendation. They already had the exercise programs. The only
Mhm,
thing was that this further motivated them to attend the exercises, and they are often running Tai Chi. Uh, but we
mhm,
just also observed that the fact of they coming and doing this assessment every week, that was really motivating for them. I kind of had positive reinforcement to on them that they could do better next time and they could do better next time. And of course, we were there just once per week, so I'm sure in between they all were attending the group classes, but I'm not really sure what kind of exercises they did.
Right, we have another question from Laura Ojeda. Is FDA approval required before insurance can cover this?
Actually not. So that's the other great things I've recently discovered is that there is a Medicare core code for fall prevention that you can get reimbursed for that. But it's not clear whether they're gonna support telehealth or technologies like this. It's more for in-person visit. So if the A approval, in my view, would not be required as long as you do the assessment and you provide the insight. But if we move toward intervention, and then
Treatment.
this can, yeah, exactly, and retreatment, then yes, it would be needed.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I'm going to take a question for John now from Laura McIntosh. I'll read it separately though. What are your thoughts about proactive care for persons with head injury? And
So there is a significant opportunity to be proactive about determining following a head injury, is there a significant vestibular component? And if yes, proactively addressing it with a vestibular stimulation therapy. We actually have a very large project in that domain, and the results are very promising. And the important word there is proactive.
Mhm. Okay, and then related, the next part of the question, do current tests indicate that healing can last beyond the 6 months in older adults that you cited?
Yes, so we're monitoring the persistence of both the balance and the gait enhancements and the corresponding reductions in fall risk. The persistence in our study population so far is 6 to 12 months, and perhaps longer Everyone is a little bit different. But what's attractive about the treatment, actually about both the diagnostic and the treatment, a simple 2-minute test will tell you if the persistence has declined to the point where it's time for a refresher treatment, right? That refresher treatment only needs to be 5 days in a row, not the full 18 sessions.
Okay.
So it's easy to determine for each individual at which point there has been sufficient decline that a repeat treatment will be justified.
Okay. Well, you might have already just answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. The other part was when an older adult has a follow-up set of sessions, have the same deficits reappeared?
No.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Would we have 1 minute left? If there's one last question, I'll be happy to take it. Otherwise, we can conclude. I want to thank both John and Hamid for really stimulating presentations, fascinating work, and really exciting. And we're really proud that you've been our pilot investigators in our Mass AITC. So thank you so much for sharing your results with us. Have a good afternoon, everybody.